He is a very little fellow, that's true, but would do better for the theater of variety.
There can be no doubt of that. Dupin, this is beyond my comprehension. How is it possible you should know that I was thinking of?
Of Chantilly, you are remarking to yourself that his diminutive figure unfitted him for tragedy.
How?
The fruit seller led to your train of thought.
I know no fruit seller.
The one we just passed? Let me explain. I could see your pattern of thought. The chain runs thus: Chantilly, Orion, Dr. Nicholas Epicurus, Stereotomy, the street stones, the fruiterer.
But you are correct.
Such was the power of analysis, or in Dupin's case, ratiocination, which was the logical process of thought.
Extraordinary supernatural murders. Look at this. The two of us know this was not the work of spirits. Madame was killed by worldly means.
This morning, in Daly's edition of the paper, the morning silence was shattered by the screams of terror. After breaking in, neighbors found Madame L. and her daughter, Mademoiselle C., dead. Witnesses heard voices fleeing the scene. But the means of escape puzzle the police, as they cannot find a single entry point, save for an open fourth-story window. The apartment was wrecked and covered in 4,000 francs of gold. Madame C. was found in the chimney, while Madame L. was discovered in the garden.
What an ordeal.
The next day,
The morning... Oops. There's more in this paper on the murders. Says they didn't socialize much.
Isidore Mousset heard voices, could distinguish the words sacre and diable, obviously a Frenchman. The other voice was foreign, the same for the banker and the clerk. Other neighbors reportedly heard loud voices after the screaming, and one was French. The other spoke in a mysterious tongue.
the coroner noted extensive bruising all about Mademoiselle L's body, and a peculiar handprint around her neck, and punctures which were seemingly from fingernails. Concluded the cause of death was strangulation. Madame L's body was horribly crushed, bones shattered. The head was completely severed from the body, probably from a razor.
The paper ran a buzz with the news of an arrest of an Adolphe Le Bon. This paper seemed to have a lack of incriminating evidence, and he was Dupin's old friend.
Dupin, you seem fascinated with this affair.
Mm-hmm. What is your opinion?
All of Paris seems to think that this mystery is unsolvable.
We must not judge. The Paris police force has no cunning. Simple minds complete simple tasks. They cannot see the big picture.
We shall make an inquiry for fun. Maybe we'll find what they miss.
The pair advanced to the scene of the crime.
The voices heard are proved to not be the voices of the victims. This was no murder-suicide. The little old lady didn't have the strength. There must be a third party. Likely that whose voices were heard. Did you observe anything peculiar about the testimonies of these voices?
Nothing peculiar. Why?
The witnesses agreed that there was one voice of a Frenchman, but the other was foreign.
Yes, nobody could distinguish the language being spoken. We must find what was occurred that had not before.
The windows had been closed behind the perpetrator, and apparently nailed shut. It was truly a conundrum.
The nail was mistaken by the police for, in actuality, a spring, which was what forced the window closed when the criminal climbed out.
But what of his descent to the ground?
Elementary, my boy. The shutters provide decent handholds, ascending and descending.
But what of the rifle drawers?
Madame L. and her daughter were rich, so the motive could lay in money. If all of the gold francs hadn't been accounted for, the entire sum was present in those bags when the investigation began.
The foreign tongue, the unusual strength, and the startling absence of motive. Here is a woman strangled to death and shoved up the chimney feet first. This is an atypical mode of murder, or of hiding one.
The strength is truly what caught his attention. Madame L's hair was ripped from her body, and her head cut clean. Mademoiselle C was brutally forced up a chimney. It took 5 men to get her down.
What result then has ensued? What impression have I made upon your fancy?
I see now you think it was some madman, but the hair I have in my hand is not that of a madman. I disentangled this little tuft from the rigidly clutched fingers of Madame L.
Dupin, this is most unusual. This is no human hair.
Before you decide, look at my sketch of the crime scene. This is her neck, and the fingerprints lay upon.
In a history of detective fiction, there was often evidence found and conclusions drawn from the evidence found in the stories. This is how part of detective fiction became.
This is no human mark.
Dupin found a passage.
Oh, found passage.
The orang-utang is of the East Indian Islands, with gigantic stature, prodigious strength and activity, wild ferocity, and the intelligent grip on imitative properties.
The fingerprints belong to the orangutan, along with the tuft of hair. The only mystery left is the voice.
A Frenchman was heard clearly, a Maltese sailor crying out, possibly in regret or surprise. He could be innocent. He may have lost the orangutan.
He could not have recaptured it. How is it possible that you know this man is a sailor belonging to a Maltese vessel?
I do not know it. I'm not sure of it, but I found this greasy hair ribbon tied in a Maltese-style knot, made popular on ships with sailors.
This is an example of Sherlock Holmes in detective fiction. Edgar Allan Poe made a trope, a style characterized by popular detective fiction actor of Sherlock Holmes, a man who did analytical thought through process of analysis. Dupin and Watson confront the sailor.
Bonne nuit, monsieur.
Sit down, my friend. I suppose you have called about the orangutan. I almost envy you. He is a remarkably fine, valuable animal. How old do you suppose him to be?
I have no way of telling, but he can't be more than 4 or 5. Have you got him here?
No, he is at a stable in the Rue Morgue. You can get him out in the morning. Are you prepared to identify the property?
To be sure I am, sir.
I shall be sorry to part with him.
I don't mean to put you through all this trouble, and am willing to pay you a reward for finding the orangutan.
A reward is fair. My request is that I'm given all the information you know about all the Rue Morgue murders.
The mood intensifies.
You are frightened for no reason. I know you're innocent, but you can't deny your involvement in the crimes. You are bound by every principle of honor to confess all you know. An innocent man is charged.
So God help me, I will confess my affairs.
A flashback begins. The scene of the crime. Mademoiselle C and Madame L count their money and talk quietly in their room. When suddenly...
Mon Dieu! Oh, sacre diable!
The Maltese sailor has discovered his orangutan escaped and murdered 2 people! The sailor stated his voyage, where he captured the orangutan on which he sought to sell after he safely got it home. On the night of the murder, he found the beast in his room with the possession of a razor. The orangutan then took off out the window, was lost in the streets. He was attracted to the light of Madame L's chamber, the victim. The sailor followed, listening to the hideous shrieks. When the sailor peered in, Madame L and Mademoiselle C were in their night clothes, arranging some papers in the iron chest, which had already mentioned. The contents were spread across the floor, and the victims with their backs to the window. The beast took Madame L by the hair and cut her face with a razor. The lady screamed, infuriating the orangutan. With one sweep of its muscular arm, it nearly severed her head from her body. The orangutan then flew upon the body of the girl and bit into her neck, killing her. Now in fear, the orangutan thrust the girl's corpse up the chimney as it was found, and threw Madame L out the window. The sailor rushed home in fear of the consequence for his ownership. The orangutan escaped out the window. The end.